How are you?
Hey, doing good. Do you think it's going to work now?
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah,
Yeah. How you doing? You looking well? You're not looking on the verge of death or
yeah,
paranoid?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's most of it. It's all mostly psychological. It's
Amen.
voodoo.
Yes, it is. It is. Whereas the Brits like to say it's bad juju.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're doing good.
Yes, yes, we're doing well. We're doing well. Eating well and staying in good spirits. So that
Yeah,
definitely helps. Definitely
yeah.
helps. You know what really kills me just before we get into the meat and bones of it? Gosh, some people just love to be afraid. I think that they like it. They pretend that they don't like it, but secretly they get something. I don't know if it's the cortisol hit that they like, or is it the fear porn, or the whatever it is that's doing it for them. I'm in a group chat, and my God. And it's like mostly women. There's just one guy in there. He's the common sense guy. But they all just love freaking each other out and who has suffered the most. I've been quarantining myself since March. Well, I've been doing it since February. It's like, okay, it's not a
Yeah,
contest. Oh, I haven't left my house at all. You've been going out? How dare you go out? It's like, oh my God. Calm down.
yeah.
Calm down.
Well, you know how obviously how professional sports are used to as a diversion, right?
Yeah.
Bread and circuses. Well, yeah, I've noticed that people. It doesn't matter if their team wins or loses. They're getting a rush
Yeah.
either way. And you're
Yes.
right. It's like an adrenaline
Yeah.
or whatever you said, cortisonal, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Stress hormone.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's they need that. So that's
Yeah.
why Salty Bear, people who live in cities that have losing teams, like I don't know if you're familiar, like Toronto, Canada.
Oh
It's like
God. Hockey team that's
a
never won
running.
but grossing the
Yeah,
most than any
yeah, but
franchise. Yeah.
they'll fill that place every night,
Yeah.
and they'll have, even in Canada where there's hardly any people, they'll have millions of viewers to watch the Leafs because it doesn't matter. They need the rush,
Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it's a loss.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you dare say anything remotely positive, they will just freak out on you. And I feel compassion for them because I think like before all of this happened, they were just relatively like getting, they were just normal people, not one way or the other. But as soon as like this high alert moment comes, it really shows you who people really are deep down. And their fear is a flesh and blood kind of fear. Whereas like the Bible says, don't fear him who can kill the body, but fear him who can kill the body and the soul. And, like they obviously don't have that grounding, and it really bothers them when other
Yeah.
people do. They're like, there was this one lady's like, can you believe it? People are going to mega churches and just daring to attend church. It's like, well, yeah, because they have faith and not fear. It's
Yeah.
like, maybe you should go to church. And
Yeah.
yeah, and another lady's just anyway. I'm not gonna whinge about them, but anyway.
But isn't it, Salty Bear, isn't
Yeah.
it amazing how quickly the churches caved in? Overall, you're right. There are a
Very few.
few pastors have been arrested. I even heard about an Easter service, and the police put spike strips down to stop people from parking in their cars. Yeah. Now I say there's all these people online saying, "Oh, write a letter to your congressman." No, go slash the tires of that cop car, flat out. I'll say that.
And
And
just for the record, we're not advocating the slashing of cop car tires.
yeah,
Not just metaphorically.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's like tit for tat. If they're gonna stop you from driving into the parking lot, and there's like 10 times as many of them as the police, and I support the police. I have lots of friends who are
Absolutely.
police. But if they're
Absolutely.
going to do that, they've abrogated their constitutional duties.
Absolutely. What's that expression? Give me freedom or give me death. I mean, don't we have? Isn't part of being free the freedom to take risks and potentially suffer those risks, Isn't
Yeah.
that really the point? It's not just free to watch pornos and drink sugary drinks and do drugs and whatever, have sexcapades. It's the freedom to make your choices and suffer the consequences. So if I want to risk getting sick, then okay, that's my
Yeah.
choice. Assuming that that's even how illness happens anyway.
Yeah, assuming that we even could get sick,
Assuming
right?
that's let's, based on your own premise, let's just give you the benefit of the doubt there. Anyway, so I did post that well, I don't want, is it an article? Like just a bit of information that you sent. But if you'd like to, because not everyone who watches the videos will have me on Twitter or vice versa, but I can also post this on my Twitter because seems to get getting more traffic over there. So for the people who have not heard or seen, please explain to us. I don't want to say it's your theory because a lot of people have this made these connections, and there's certainly some merit to it, but everyone's always like, show me the evidence. Well, let's logically talk this through. What evidence do we have to present in this case? So I'm gonna zip my lip and I'll let you get on with it.
Sure. And we're recording. We're good.
We're recording.
Good?
Yes. And if anything cuts out, I will let you know straight away.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, that's been happening a lot on videos like this that question the narrative.
I wonder why.
Drop signal, big blank spots, buffering. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. So, and you're absolutely right. A lot of people know it's not my theory. A lot of people know without any wonder that Roundup is indeed causing problems. So what happened with Roundup? It was tested tested as a poison. They did what's called a LD50 test. That goes back like a half century. LD50 stands for lethal dose 50%. And it's where you take any substance like eyeliner or shreddies, whatever you're testing, you feed it to a population of rats or rabbits until half of them die. So that's where you get the term lethal dose 50. And then they take that number, whatever that is, that killed half of the rats, and they divide it by 1,000. And there you go. That's how they get the safe level for humans. So most people would say, well, that's pretty good. They divided it by 1,000. So it's, if it killed half the rats, well, then presumably we're going to be so low on the poison scale that it won't kill any humans. Okay, that's if you're dealing with something as a poison. But if you want to look at something epidemiologically or immunologically, that isn't going to work. I mean, so of the 50% of rats that didn't die, well, did they die the following day? Did they die 6 days later? I mean, we don't even understand how the immune system works. So I don't know really if there are any immunological tests, because like I said, they don't even know how the immune system really works. So there's Roundup, and the way it kills plants is by attacking photosynthesis. It's called the Shikimate Pathway. That's the biological term. Yeah, Shikimate. And the way you remember that,
I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, the way you remember that is it sounds like shake and bake.
You shake, I bake? Okay.
Yeah, shake and bake chicken. The Shikimate Pathway is... So you'll have all these biological functions, and if you just eliminate one or create a bottleneck, then the whole like photosynthesis is a very complex process. But if you just limit or bottleneck one, then it chokes off the whole system and the plant dies. So we were always told, going back to these what I call their toxicity studies, we were told, well, you don't even use photosynthesis, Salty Bear. So what are you worried about? And your little baby, it's not going to use we're mammals. It turns out though that bacteria and other microorganisms do use the Shikimate pathway. And there's one more piece to the puzzle. You never spray Roundup when it's cold. Some pesticides will work no matter what, right? Like if you took arsenic up at the North Pole, it would still kill you. It has nothing to do with the temperature. But with Roundup, it does matter. the plant has to be in a growth state. So if you sprayed when it's too cold, the Roundup will just sit there on the leaves and it won't do any harm. It won't get absorbed, but the plant has to be in a growth state. So you could reduce your the dosage of Roundup to kill a plant. You could reduce it if you knew the plant was really in an uptake, in a growth state. Well, guess what? Back to our immune systems, full of these little microorganisms that we don't even understand. When you're stressed, or if you have a cold, or if you broke your arm, or if you have cancer, your immune system is in a growth state.
Yes, inflammation will make you want to repair yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not in the day off. It's not dormant. It's not waiting for the next.
Yes, always vigilant.
Your get are going to uptake. Here we have supposedly safe for absorbing Roundup.
Sorry, it says we're having a poor connection. So after you said, if I could just have you repeat, after you said it's not dormant to your immune system, that's when it started glitching. So what did you say there, just for a minute? Hello. Hi. Oh gosh,
there.
It's happening. Yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
Okay, I lost you at where you said the immune system is not dormant, it's always active, so pick it up back there if you could. Sorry.
Right. So we're told there's a safe level to ingest Roundup. And it's very, very low.
And can I just interrupt? How did they get the divide by 1,000? Like, is that just a random number, or did they think it's high enough? Because, like, from my understanding, I've studied like statistical analysis and things, and the number might seem like to someone who's not trained, oh, that's such a low number. It's not probable. Yeah, but it's statistically significant. So actually, it is a meaningful number. And so people who don't maybe quite understand that, could you tell us, is it just a random number?
As far as I know, it's random.
Okay.
Because it sounds good. Because if they had divided it by 10,000, then makeup companies would go out of business.
Okay. Because they have to allow some level of toxicity, otherwise no products would go to market.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if we're dealing with, by the way, if we're dealing with pesticides,
yes,
herbicides and insecticides, they are, even the organic ones, they have to be.
Well, by definition.
I think I've told you this joke before. A farmer is buying pesticide, and someone behind him says, well, I sure hope that's not toxic. And the farmer turns around and looks and he says, well, if it's not toxic, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
And again, that goes for organic, fully approved, so-called natural insecticides. They have to be
but
toxic.
All toxic things come from nature before they're synthesized and made like synthetics. So it is natural. It's another branding thing, isn't it? It's all natural. Well, everything's natural. Show me what's not natural in this planet and outside of it.
Yeah, and it's how we concentrate it. And
exactly. The dosage makes the poison, isn't it?
Exactly, as Paracelsus said.
That's right.
Yeah. So they divide by 1,000, and really, I as far as I'm concerned, it's arbitrary. Okay. But here's good news, I guess. More recently, instead of LD50, instead of waiting until half of the rats died, they'll look for what's called behavioral changes.
Okay.
So they'll say, well, all of the rats are alive, but half of them are ripping their own fur off, or chewing the ear off their neighbor, or something, behavioral. And it could just be they're twitching, right? It doesn't have to be something graphic like I just described. So when they see what's some behavioral change, they'll take that result and again divide it by 1,000. No matter what, as I understand, they're dividing by 1,000 to get the allowed human level. So now again with Roundup, you could divide by 1,000,000 because you're inside your system, you're inside your gut. I guess if you were perfectly healthy and you weren't watching the news and you weren't stressed out by any of this, I guess you could ingest maybe even, a larger dose of Roundup, and your immune system would just say, yeah, whatever. But again, if you're just like a weed, if your immune system is on the uptake, if it's on the growth, if it's on alert, the smallest amount. So here's a quick example. There are stories of farmers who they'll have a sprayer. They only have one sprayer, and they want to use it for what's called foliar feeding. And foliar feeding is when you feed the plant with a sugar substance through the leaves. So you spray sugar water on the leaves. And if they use that sprayer for Roundup, of course they have to thoroughly clean it. And they'll do what's called a soak clean and then a triple rinse. Well, here's the bad news. If they didn't quite clean it perfectly, and it has to be perfect, and they spray which is a cash crop, and it's on that growth state, well, they might think there was a nominal amount of Roundup left in there, parts per million, but it will kill plants, even though they did all the proper procedures of cleaning and triple rinsing. So again, it depends on the we're buffering. It depends on the plant. So we said a minute ago, the dosage makes the poison. Well, the susceptibility or the uptake of the victim, whether it's a weed or your microorganisms, is as or more important.
Okay.
So that's some insight into why people are worried about Roundup, touted as the safest herbicide on the market. Well, sure, if you're using it for what it was originally intended, which was preceding weed killing. So yeah, it has no chance of getting on the crop at all. I guess there's some chance, even after you seed the crop, there could be some Roundup left in the soil. But now you have the whole growing season for it to dissipate. Okay, well then two things started happening. We had Roundup ready crops, GMO crops.
Yeah.
Now
so they're resistant to it.
Yeah, and it's going on the crop now, not on some weed that died.
Is that something you can wash off, or is it penetrated into the membrane?
It's uptaken. Is that the right verb?
Taken up.
It's taken up by the plant. Like some poisons just kill on contact. By the way, vinegar is a great example. It's purely organic. It'll kill you if you buy it in levels that are deemed effective for sanitizing or weed killing. It'll kill you by inhaling it. The vinegar you have at home is only 3%. You can get all the way up to 90% vinegar. And yeah, it's lethal. But hey, perfectly natural. And again, though, it only kills on contact with your lungs in that case. So it has nothing to do with whether the plant is uptaking or whether you're uptaking it. It'll just kill you. Vinegar, fully natural, organic. It'll kill you. Okay. So, but back to Roundup, to answer your question, a Roundup ready crop is absorbing it. That's what plants do with Roundup. They're tricked. They're tricked into absorbing it. And then, it's in the crop. It doesn't kill the Roundup ready crop because it's genetically immunized to it.
Yeah.
So now the worst thing we're doing with Roundup is desiccating. And that's the forced ripening of a crop. Now you're as close as possible to harvest. And that is, if you just Google agronomic opinions on that, they'll say it's not really advised. There's a lot of quotes basically that say flat out, Roundup is not a desiccant. And then the next paragraph will say...
And what is desiccating? Yeah.
Sorry?
And what is desiccating? You mean like...
it's forced ripening.
Oh, forced ripening. Sorry, right.
Yeah. It basically kills the crop. It ripens itself as it's dying. It desiccant, what it literally means is to dehydrate something.
Because I hear like desiccated coconut, which is like the dried, shriveled up, cut up coconut. So that's the dehydrating is what the word is. Okay. Right.
But they're really sort of a misnomer in the case of ripening because they're killing it, right? When you buy apples or coconut, you're not. It was already you already picked it. It was dead, and now you're just going to dehydrate it.
Okay.
They're not just dehydrating the crop. They're murdering it. No, it was going to die anyway. But yeah, so this allows for corporate farming.
Okay.
Seeding is very flexible. You know, if you get rained out during seeding and you miss a week or 2 weeks, no problem. You just seed later. Most crops, you'll be fine depending on where you are. If you're up north where we get early frost, you can just switch crops. You have 120-day wheat, which is a good crash crop. If you miss seeding, you just switch to 90-day barley or 60-day peas. There's lots of ways that farmers will never leave a field empty. Right. If that field was supposed to be seeded this year, you know, it's not a fallow field. Yeah, so seeding is flexible. It's also less equipment intensive. Mm-hmm. You know, you can get a used seeder, even an air seeder, like a 50 or 60 foot wide air seeder. You can pick them up, no problem. But harvesting, a harvester, also known as a combine, mm-hmm. for your large seeding, you're looking at $1.5 million just for one machine. So most farmers don't own them anymore. They contract their harvesting out. Now, when you have a contractor working his way up from southern Texas all the way up to Saskatchewan, where I used to live, yeah, he's coming, you know, give or take a few days. He's coming on a certain day, so you will desiccate the crop so it's dead ripe when his crew arrives. So this is the new model of farming, and it's really lends itself to corporate farming and reducing the head count of farmers. So yeah. There's the growth market for Roundup. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people are wondering, we're going to finally get to Bayer. Bayer Crop Science bought Monsanto. And everyone assumes, well, they wanted to buy the GMO patents, you know, like Roundup Ready crops. Right. Those have maxed out. Like Europe's not allowing them. Russia's not allowing them. Yeah. Chinese are faking them. You know, they're making knockoff versions of them, so they're not paying for the patent use. So that's it. It's still lucrative, but it's flatlining. The other, of course, traditional use was just spraying weed killing, and that has basically flatlined too. In other words, there's no more farmers who are waking up to the advantages of killing weeds with Roundup instead of cultivating, right? All the farmers figured that out back in the 80s. So there's no growth, but the growth sector for Roundup is in desiccation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Bayer is looking at. And I would say that they know about the potential impact on the Shikimate Pathway inside of us. They know, they just don't care. So here we have these lawsuits now. Monsanto was being sued, and you might wonder, well, then why did Bayer buy Monsanto if they were in the middle of being sued? But they went ahead and bought them. The number of lawsuits kept mounting. We're up to over 50,000 lawsuits. They started with 1,300 when I wrote the article last year for Dr. E. Michael Jones for Culture Wars. Mm-hmm. And so, they're up to over 50,000 lawsuits. So a lot of people are saying, wow, did Bayer buy a pig in a poke? What a dumb move. And I say, no, they don't care. They're not. There could be 100,000 lawsuits. They are fine with this because it's gonna remember Roundup, the safest herbicide that they used to say you could drink.
You first, Bayer. You drink it first.
Yeah, or my old friend Dr. Patrick Moore out of Vancouver, one of the founders of Greenpeace, he used to say that. He was embarrassed on French TV 4 years ago. They offered him a cup of Roundup. He walked off the set, which was a good move. You shouldn't drink it. In any case, so here they are facing these lawsuits. Their stock price plummeted as soon as they inked the deal. Oh, and by the way, they paid full market value for Monsanto. They didn't get a deal, right? Like if I was buying your house and there was termites in it, well, I'm gonna try to knock you down on it. They didn't come down 1 cent. They paid. You'll like this number, Salty. $66 billion.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
$6 billion for Monsanto. So now Bayer can say, Monsanto could never have done an about face on Roundup because they had committed, 40 years of saying it's perfectly safe. So Bayer can now say, well, we didn't know. We were trying to buy their GMO technology or whatever. They can say whatever they want. And we just ended up with Roundup, and now we got 100,000 lawsuits. And so what they're going to do is they're going to settle. And the government will help them, just like the government helped with the tobacco settlements in the 90s. All of the cost, they don't care because all of the cost will be worked into the price of a gallon of Roundup. They'll just pass in fact, that's how most of these lawsuits do get settled. It's and then they're indemnified. Bayer will be indemnified. Now, of course, Roundup isn't patented anymore. So a lot of people say, well, there's lots of off-brand makers of Roundup. Well, they won't be indemnified, right? Because they're just some ma and pa operation, and by ma and pa, I mean it's only worth $100 million. Some plant somewhere in the world. There's, as I say, there's 40 making off-brand glyphosate, which is Roundup. If especially if they're not under jurisdiction of the USDA, they'll just be driven out of business. Of course, Bayer will go around and buy up some of these, and they will get a deal. They will get a good price. That's, by the way, how Alfred Nobel monopolized dynamite, TNT.
Yeah.
He would go around to anyone making off-brand, and he threatened them with legal action. And then he'd either buy their factory or shut it down. And that's how he became so rich that he could start the Nobel Prize stuff that we hear about, which is all garbage.
Yeah, that's how all monopolies pretty much do. They get all the market share because they can afford to buy you out or take enough losses on themselves because you as a company can't afford to sustain those losses. I think Amazon did that as well. It's how they got so big on the internet shopping. Yeah.
Did it with Microsoft,
Don't get me started about that guy.
It's always under the umbrella of the government.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
Monopolies can't exist without the government's assistance, can they?
So Bayer will say, "Oh, you're right. Roundup is dangerous."
Right.
Oh, wow, we better do something. And I guarantee you, Bayer, the CEO is Werner Baumann. He's a German Jewish gentleman. I guarantee you he's already got his people in Washington and Ottawa and in Brussels helping the regulators write the regulations. And it will, just like happened with tobacco, it'll squeeze out any competition. Only Bayer will be indemnified. So yeah. Roundup is off patent, but it'll effectively be patented once again. Bayer, maybe a couple of the off-brand guys will survive, like maybe in China, right? There's probably a couple of factories in China making glyphosate. Well, yeah, they'll be untouchable. How's Werner Baumann gonna, threaten them and muscle them? Well, who cares? He'll just say, fine, China can have their own Roundup, and he'll control. And again, it's the desiccation market he's after, because that is projected for the largest growth. Why? Because we already have 90% less farmers than we did when I was a kid. 90% less. Well, yeah, that last 10% is just going to disappear. It's going to be all corporate with all hired hands. And again, for the harvest of the crop, the most important part, it'll all be with custom contract harvesters. So that's what Bayer is doing. There's a couple more, but I don't want to.
No, keep going. I'm just shocked.
So
Yeah.
So to the lawsuits.
So sorry, is this individual people suing them, or is this like companies, or what are they suing for? Is it health effects or bad? That's the interesting part. Bad business practice,
or what? A number of law firms in on this. Yeah. I think a lot of the law firms are just finding the clients and then they sell them to the main law firm, because I do believe Bayer is in negotiation with a single law firm. Okay. But if you Google it, there's so many law firms that are saying, give us a call, free consultation. And they're just rounding people up by the thousands.
Oh, you said it. Pardon the pun. Rounding people up.
Yeah. Hurting them. They're hurting them.
Yeah. So it's a class action they're going for?
I don't know legally if it's technically a class action, but the first few settlements, which have been for millions of dollars, weren't. They were individual settlements. Mm-hmm. But here's the interesting part, Salty Bear.
Yeah.
None of the plaintiffs so far, none of them have been farmers.
Right.
None. There's people who were using it in their yard. There was a gardening guy in California. I think he worked for some municipality, and all legitimate, probably. I mean, the question is, does Roundup cause cancer? Mm-hmm. It doesn't even matter in this scheme. It doesn't matter to the lawyers, and it doesn't matter to, you might think Bayer would like to disprove that. But no, as I said, Bayer is already... They've already hinted in the media that, maybe Roundup isn't safe. They pretended they were going to reformulate it, which you can't do. It'd be like reformulating water, right? You can't reformulate Roundup. It's a very simple chemical composition. So I think that was a lie. At the very least, it was a diversion. And now, Werner Bowman is saying, we probably do need stricter regulations. And again, he'll just make sure those play into his hands. So he's not trying to disprove any of these cases. He's negotiating with them. So anyway, none of them are farmers. Mm-hmm. Farmers should have been the first to succumb because they're using it the most. Like we're talking, if you use a gallon in your yard, just a small farmer would use thousands of gallons. If you look at pre-seeding and if they're growing a GMO crop, and then if they're desiccating, and by the way, you can't desiccate a GMO Roundup Ready crop because it's immune, right? Oh. It's immune to Roundup. Well, you can't desiccate it, but you used it in the middle of the growing season. And if you're growing a Roundup Ready crop, you probably have other crops like wheat that aren't genetically modified, and you're probably going to... So the average farmer is buying Roundup 3 times a year in bulk, like I say, thousands of gallons. So you'd think they'd be the first. They'd be the first lined up. So there might be... Yeah.
No, I was just wondering, are they like... Because I know sometimes lawyers or corporate guys will come and scare you and say, you better not, try, otherwise you're not going to be able to buy from us, or you're never going to do business in this town again, bucko. So I feel like I've touched on something. Is that why the farmers are not doing it?
Yeah. So now imagine you're one of these ambulance-chasing lawyer sharks who's rounding up, herding in all the plaintiffs, and you get a farmer. Or a farmer's widow says, my husband died. Here's his file from
they're super exposed to it, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What does the lawyer do? He maybe pretends he's interested, but he puts you on the back burner. Why? Yeah. The last thing the lawyers want is to ban Roundup, Salty Bear. Right. How are they collect the settlements? Whether they still continue to go through courts on a case-by-case basis, whether they become a class action, or as Werner Bowman is proposing, he's just going to write a big fat check. And I said they're saying that it might cost him $1 billion. $1 billion? Who cares? That's 1/66.
Oh, there it is. Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I'd be willing to pay if forced to. He'd rather not pay anything, but I think he'd be willing to pay what he paid for Monsanto to get all of this packed away the way he wants it. Wow. So in other words, a farmer comes in, that's the last person the lawyers want to represent. See, remember silicone breast implants back in the 90s?
Yeah.
Dow Corning was sued, and the lawyers messed up. They sued so hard, Dow Corning is no more. Now, it turns out silicone breast implants, which I don't recommend.
No, get gel. I'm just kidding.
What's that?
I said no, get gel. They don't leak. No, I'm kidding.
Have babies.
That's
and then
right.
You'll have wonderful boobies.
That's right. That's right.
Or fat.
Or just get fat. Yeah.
The lawyers messed up.
Yeah.
Not the defense lawyers, the plaintiffs. They sued Dow Corning into bankruptcy, and that was it. So when a company goes into receivership, they just take whatever assets are left and divide them up. So the plaintiffs, and it turns out it's not true. The Dow Corning silicone breast implant didn't cause cancer, but it was too late. The company was destroyed. And so they didn't get the settlements they were hoping for. Compare that to the tobacco settlements later in the 90s. they made sure to keep the tobacco companies intact. And they raised the price of a pack of cigarettes from $1.50 to like $12.
Oh my God, I know. When I was, when I was a youngster, and I'm embarrassed to say this, like a pack of cigarettes, a large, like a king size 25 pack would be, I think, $4 or something. And what are people paying now? Like 15 and up? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that.
And I don't even smoke.
So they were able to do that by, there was no more competition, right? The government sanctioned this. The government got a huge cut of that. Most of that is tax, but don't worry.
Yeah,
the cigarette companies,
like alcohol, most of it's tax as well.
Yeah, but still, the companies made out very well. When the company gets their portion of that outrageous price for a package of cigarettes, which you shouldn't smoke, of course, but when they get their portion, yes, they're still paying out a portion of that to what's called the Tobacco Settlement Fund. But don't worry, they're making all sorts of profits. And you can go look at the Wall Street Journal just last year, because I quoted the article for Culture Wars. It says there's never been a better time to be in the tobacco industry. Never been a better time.
Wow.
And we're here on the tail end of the 25-year period during which the tobacco settlement payouts were made. So yeah, the last thing you do when you sue someone is destroy them. Werner Bowman knows this. He also knows if he captures most or all of the market for Roundup by squeezing out the competition through over-regulation, he'll be able to charge whatever he wants for a gallon of Roundup. And that'll just drive up the cost of food.
Yeah, I just have a question, though, because you mentioned regulation, and I was going to ask, who is the regulatory body for this? Is this the Food and Drug or Agriculture Department or Health? Or because actually, it's so funny. I just watched a documentary about this earlier today. But the tobacco industry will fund, like, for example, the World Health Organization at that time. And so, like, or they'll have, obviously conflict of interest. How can you have a consultant working for you when you're supposed to be promoting health, when you're in a health destroying business? And so I'm wondering, maybe, is there some unholy alliance, or who is exactly regulating them, and who's checking on the regulators that they're actually have sound policies in place?
Well, to answer your question, the tobacco companies are checking on regulators, literally. And in this case, Bayer will check on the regulators. They will.
Exactly.
It's
industry checking on the regulators, not the other way around. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and there'll be all of your, hive of activists. God bless them. Most of them are absolutely right. They'll be heard. They'll have hearings. You'll have your typical 120-day response period to any legislation, and people will write in, and none of it will get looked at. Probably the solution's already been decided. How the wording will be has already been decided. But to answer your question for Roundup, it's the USDA, the EPA, and the FDA. It's all three.
Okay.
So even on organics, which is under the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, for organic certification, and it's totally under them. They have the power of life and death over organic businesses. Even under that, the FDA and the EPA weighed in. They have their little, if you go to their sites, they'll have one little page saying how they participated. But I think with Roundup, it's going to be more even participation across those three. So the Department of Agriculture, Food and Drug, and Environmental Protection. They'll all have their say. See, Roundup is supposed to go inert when it contacts soil, but it doesn't go inert right away. Most pesticides don't. They stay active even after they pass by the plant and go into the soil. But Roundup is supposed to go inert. It turns out it takes it can be 28 days depending on conditions. And so Roundup is ending up in waterways. Right. So there's a lot of environmental groups justifiably worried about that.
Yeah.
But it's funny you said, how could a company or a segment of the economy, how could they, who are providing a dangerous product, advise the regulators?
Yeah.
Well, they're not, Salty Bear, because didn't you read the legislation? all you had to do was read the new regulations that yes, when used outside of these parameters, it's dangerous. But the new regulations are going to say how it's safe. They're going to admit they were wrong before. Again, something Monsanto never could have done. They're going to admit it. And all of those environmental groups will be happy. Yay, we finally won. And they won't realize that all that's going to happen is the sanctioned use, and I call misuse, of Roundup. That's all that's going to happen. Just like, how can you safely smoke a cigarette? Well, it turns out that if the pack you bought warns you with more than 50% of the label that it could kill you, it turns out you can smoke now, right?
Yeah. It's like, how do we safely pollute? Well, obviously it's going to be taxes, isn't it? Once you pay enough taxes, the air is just cleaned magically.
Yes, within those strict parameters set out by the regulators. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it's legally no longer dangerous. So that's what's going to happen, and Bayer will be indemnified. Now, if you 50 years from now start up an off-brand glyphosate factory in Uruguay, okay, outside of the jurisdiction of America, they will find you eventually, just like Alfred Nobel used to find his competition. They will find you, and even though they have no jurisdiction, they will shut you down. They will put pressure on the government of Uruguay. They will tax exports out of Uruguay. They will do whatever they have to. So even 50 years from now, no one, just like with cigarettes, no one's starting any new cigarette companies, are they? In fact, they ended up consolidating after the tobacco settlements, and I forget, instead of 5, there's 3, something like that. And that's just what just happened with Monsanto.
But you look at all the labels, there's so many brands. But of course, the same like with the food, right? You look at all those brands, it's like, Nestle owns that, Coke owns that, it's all the same.
Yeah. Or with the media. Walt Disney.
It's just a couple people.
Fox News now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's just a couple.
Yeah, it's all this consolidation. But again, Salty, don't get so conspiratorial. It's all being done according to the regulations.
It's not a conspiracy. Fine. It's just a lot of coincidences.
Exactly. What are you worried about?
I really hate that word because conspiracy is a crime. It's a real crime. Yeah. It's not like, you're a kook. You're actually planning to break the law or have already done so. I'm the one that's crazy. How about you? You're a criminal. It's like ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, but I digress. Keep going. So what's going to happen?
Not at all. You're not digressing at all. It's my article for Dr. Jones last year. I called it food wizardry, but it was also word wizardry.
Yeah.
They're using word wizardry.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
definitely.
That's all this is going to be in the end. The formula for Roundup won't change. The use of Roundup won't change. The most dangerous use of Roundup is crop desiccation, and that is the projected growth market. And on that note, by the way, one of the big projected growth markets for desiccation is rice. Can you think of a large proportion of the world that relies on rice?
Yeah, like Asia and Africa, and probably South America too. Yeah.
In the places where they grow rice, they don't have any frost. So if you have a crop that's like 75 or 80% ripe, the frost is good. If it's still a green crop, the frost kills it. But if it's almost ripe, frost is good. Right. It does the same thing as desiccation. It kills the crop. The crop doesn't, it dies slowly, and it sends all the nutrients up into the seed stalk in those last days, right after the frost. So yeah, frost is good. But wherever they grow rice, they don't have frost. So there's, for years, Monsanto has been wondering why they couldn't get Roundup desiccation into the world of rice, like in Asia. Well, I think that's one big thing Werner Bowman is looking to capitalize on.
I have a question, and I'm sorry to sound maybe ignorant, but it's not something everybody knows, so I'm going to be the dumb kid in the class to ask. Do you have to desiccate crops? Because the thing is like what we're constantly bombarded with is you're picking things ripe, like before they're ripe, and then you want them to ripen on the shelf so that they can manage transport and like long shelf lives. But now what you're saying to me, it sounds like counterintuitive because it sounds like you're ripening the crop.
Yeah.
Just explain that to me. I'm sorry to sound thick. I'm only a woman. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely
Yeah.
Yeah, so biologically, agronomically, and like you just said, economically, like what would you rather buy? A vine-ripened tomato or a tomato that was picked green and hard as rock and shipped, and while it was shipped, they pumped some sort of gas. They say it's perfectly safe into the truck, and then by the time it gets to the store, it's red, but it only looks red. It wasn't. So
so there are other ways to ripen things.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
there are
just
other ways
explain
that we've been using for thousands of years.
Okay.
Thousands of years.
I mean, I ripen my avocados with bananas next to them, and that seems to work. But I think it's a gas that you said it does give off something.
Yeah, it gives off like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't need to be done.
Still there?
Yeah. No, we're still here. So it doesn't need to be desiccated. So why are they doing it? Did you hear?
No. The reason they're doing it is there's fewer farmers. So let me briefly describe. And just let me know if we skip.
Yeah, it's doing that futuristic slow mode thing.
Farmers after harvest. Sorry, say that again.
It was doing like that futuristic slow mo. Okay, I think it's done. Okay, it's good. Terrible. I think too many people are on the internet under quarantine. Yeah.
Hear me now?
Yes. Go on, carry on. So there's not enough farmers, so they need to do this. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Now remember, seeding is pretty. You could ruin seeding. Sure, farmers have, but it's far more flexible. Harvest is you have a deadline, especially if you have frost coming, and you could lose your farm for one bad year. But what they would do in the old days, the farmer would walk the fields, and fields are different if you have highland and lowland, and the farmer would know, well, I can harvest this part, it's ready, but this other part needs another week. Forget it. You got the custom combine contractor coming next week, and he's got 12 combines on 4 semi-trailers. He's going to pull up on this road, and they're going to take that whole section of land, 640 acres, a mile by a mile. They're going to take it all off in the afternoon.
Okay.
There's no picking and choosing. And you have another 640 acres over here, and you seeded it a week later than this one. But you're going to force ripen it too, obviously. Okay. You're going to force ripen everything, and the contractor is going to take it all off for you. So, as I say in my article, which I'll send you, by the way, it's the upcoming. I just sent you the bullet point. Yeah. I say our grandparents would laugh at us. Yeah. They'd say, "What? You need a toxic chemical to harvest food? You serious?" Like our ancestors might applaud us for saying, "Wow, you're killing weeds with spray before you seed." Now, a lot of environmentalists say, no. But I grew up on a farm. You use 1/10 the fuel if you spray a field rather than cultivating it to kill the weeds. So our grandparents might say, "Good, that was a good decision." And by the way, Mother Jones magazine and Harrowsmith, they both approved of that back in the 70s. And then they changed later because Roundup is dangerous. But that seemed like a great idea and probably still is. But to use it at the end of the season, to answer your question, it's wrong on there's the only reason to do it is to have fewer farmers on the land. That's the only reason.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like you can't pick it as it's ready. You have to do it all at once because you get that one shot with the guy coming around to do it for you. Okay.
Yeah, and can I just explain too what farmers used to do? They would walk the fields. Right. And what they might do, another way, the old way of force ripening a crop was to cut it. Go ahead and cut it and leave it in the swath. And there's enough nutrients in the stem that the plant knows it's dead now, just like you cut a rose and it's going to die. The plant sends all those last nutrients up to the seed stalk. So that was your old last ditch way force ripening a crop. You would just go ahead and cut it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, when they're custom combining, they're cutting and taking the seed out at the same time. They're not cutting it, leaving it, and then coming back and threshing. It's called threshing. That's how you get the seed out of. Yeah, it's all done at once, and that's why a modern harvester is called a combine, because it combines cutting and threshing.
Right. Okay.
Those used to be separate functions. They pull and cut and leave it. You see the old pictures of a stook of wheat, where they would bundle the wheat up and put them in stooks, and they would leave them in the sun. And that was that ripening process to get the last nutrients out of the straw. Well, yeah, now it's all combined into one process, which you could still do naturally, if your crop is ripe and you have your own combine, so you can harvest any day you want instead of the day determined by this other contractor. Yeah, a lot of farms, it's called straight cutting. When you straight cut a field, you're cutting it and threshing it all at once. But the old days, it was very common to see cutting followed later by threshing. Okay. And that's all on the way of the dodo bird, Salty, because we're now dealing with so few farmers on the land.
Damn. Okay, so I have to ask, because it was the title of the document you sent me. What is the connection?
Yes.
Because this is all fascinating, but it sounds like a health issue in general. But tell me how it ties in, because there's a lot of different avenues people are taking on this particular crisis, let's say. Yeah. So what is the connection here? Well, do you know what would be so cool if I get one of those CDC blurbs where it says that's how you know your videos made it. So you know what? Put me on the map, Mischa. Do it.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
So no one knows what caused COVID-19, aka the coronavirus. Right. No one knows.
Right.
Even Fauci, the god of public health. Oh, yeah. And by the way, what is public health? If I break my arm, do I go to the Department of Public Health? Like, if you're pregnant, do you go to public health is everything.
The government's your doctor.
Right? Because if anything you have wrong with you, you'll go to that doctor for that, or that hospital. Anyway,
as soon as
so
you
their
said
public health,
it's
they don't even know.
Yeah. No,
okay.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's right.
So yeah. Did you hear what I said about
I did.
Public health?
About public health. Yeah, I got it. Yep.
Yeah, it's meaningless. It's like going to the Department of Love and Friendship. It just has no meaning. Yeah.
I wish there was such a department.
On that, we have marriage counselors,
Indeed.
right?
Indeed.
And heaven forbid the government ever got into that business, but that's what they would do. They would create a department.
They've already ruined marriage by getting into it with legal stuff. So
they have.
Let's not even poke the bear there. Yeah. Okay.
So whatever this is, as you probably heard, there's people saying it's nothing, and there's other people saying it'll kill you.
Well, it's not nothing, is it? It's something, obviously.
It is. Yeah. It is. Like I say, even if it's a hoax, it can still kill you.
Well, right? That's right.
This hoax can kill you.
To death.
Yeah. Yes. And that comes back to your immune system.
Yes.
Whether your immune system, whether your immune system is currently literally under attack from a virus, or if viruses are all fake and there's nothing going on, but your immune system is under attack because you think you're going to lose your home. Either way, the last thing you want in your gut, first thing it does is disrupt your digestive system, which is full of bacteria. But the last thing you want in your immune system is Roundup. And remember, we quoted Paracelsus earlier. The dosage makes the poison.
Right.
Not necessarily with Roundup. Okay. Roundup is more lethal when it's uptaken more quickly. Okay. So your stressed immune system, whether it's stressed by something real or something imaginary, your stressed immune system, and by the way, you've been eating trace amounts of Roundup for close to 20 years now. They've been desiccating crops for at least 20 years. When it started, it was like 1 out of 1,000 farmers were doing it. And all the other farmers said, you're crazy. But sure enough, through economic pressure and the steady reduction in headcount on farms, more and more farmers. So you've been eating it in your Cheerios, Salty Bear, whether
I don't
you knew
eat
it or not.
Cheerios.
Well,
It's straight bacon and eggs for me, love.
well, there you go. That's good because, by the way, people ask me, well, if they feed desiccated grain to an animal and then I eat the animal or the eggs.
Well, that's the other thing, the meat, yeah.
Yeah, people want to know, am I still getting it? And you're not.
Oh, really?
Because the kidney and the liver in animals
Yeah.
is a very, very effective filtration
thank
system.
God.
Yeah. Now, a lot of health aficionados used to recommend eating organs. At least they'd say once a month, eat some calf liver.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't say that anymore because that's the filtration system for the animal.
I always said that. It's like, why would you eat the thing that it cleans everything with? But like, I understand that organ meats are, high in vitamin A and all this and that or whatever, or iron or whatever it is. But like, you would have to really be certain of where that animal came from, how it was reared and fed. And if it was like truly properly farm raised, then you maybe wouldn't feel so concerned. But in modern farming, you probably don't want to eat it. It's thrown out for a reason. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the last thing you want to eat. So that means though that the eggs and the milk and the meat are probably safe. Okay. There's other things, they have antibiotics in them. Sure. So there's other things to worry about. But as far as this Roundup goes, you're probably fine eating bacon and eggs. Still though, if you're eating any grains, more and more grains are being desiccated. So any grain that isn't Roundup ready, okay?
Yeah.
So if it's an oil seed or a cereal, if it's not Roundup ready, it's probably being desiccated. Remember, you can't desiccate a Roundup ready crop because it won't die.
Right.
Yeah. So any
Why
grain,
won't you die?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So wheat especially. Wheat is king. That's the old expression from the grain belt. Corn is king in the corn belt, but outside of that, wheat is your major cash crop, and then you have barley and oats and oil seeds.
What about like
wheat
fruits and produce and like vegetables? Are they also being desiccated, or are they? No. They're the ones that are picked early to be ripened, but grains and things they need to be ripened.
There's a fake ripening process
That's
there,
right,
but it doesn't involve desiccation. Now, here on that note. Here's how we know for sure desiccation is dangerous, even though they're telling you it's not.
Right.
You know how you make beer, right? You take barley, and you sprout it.
Yep.
It has to germinate, and then they tumble it, and it breaks off the sprout, and now the seed has something like 90% more sugar in it, and then they use that to make beer. Well, you can't desiccate a barley crop. Because it won't, it reduces the germination level. So if you're growing barley for a beer company, you have to have something very high, like 97 or 98% germination rate. If it's going for feed barley, no one cares, right? And we don't eat barley basically unless it's in beer. So if you're growing, it's called malting barley. You do not desiccate the barley because it won't germinate as much, and you won't make the cut for malting barley, and you'll have to sell it for a quarter of the price to a feedlot.
Wow.
So there you go. I mean, if anyone's doubting this, everyone thinks this is overhyped, the dangers of desiccating with Roundup. The other example is hay. Farmers like their hay to be nice and still green but dry to put it up. It's called haying. And way back when some farmer in the 90s tried desiccating his hay, and he baled it up, fed it to his cows, and they started to spontaneously abort their calves.
Oh my God!
So by law, this is recognized. This isn't just a idle recommendation from organic activists. You don't desiccate barley and you don't desiccate hay.
Oh my God.
You can desiccate the oats that goes into your kid's Cheerios that you're not going to feed your kid because you're health conscious. But how many millions of people are eating Cheerios every morning? And they were desiccated, and they will be more so desiccated as fewer and fewer farmers stay on the land.
It's so funny that you say that, because I can think of two other examples, one animal related and one like human related, where for example, okay, this might also get us in trouble, but like, for example, the vaccine schedule for animals is somehow like way more ethical than it is for people, which is so weird. vet won't, like they know what to do and what not to do. Whereas with people, the other example is like if they drop it, it's all of a sudden like a hazardous material if it breaks onto the floor, and it's dangerous, but it's not dangerous inside of your body.
Yes. Yeah.
So as you said, they won't give it to cows, but they'll give it to people. Okay.
Right.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look how much more we're getting. Look how much more. I mean, cows live outside. They walk in their own poop. They sleep in it. Pigs are actually very clean animals. They know better. They're kind of like dogs and cats. Right. But cows, cows and chickens, they sleep in it and stuff. Yeah, so they're living in their own feces, and yet we give them probably a tenth as many vaccines to livestock as we're giving to humans. Yeah, that's a very good example.
I have a question for you about livestock because it's because of all this virus stuff. I was looking into other viruses and all the other crisis type things, and one of them was, do you remember mad cow disease?
Oh yes.
Okay. Yes. So I was listening to a couple of other doctors, and they wrote a book about this, and I thought that is what they said is not at all what we were told. We were told that cows were like basically cannibalizing, like they were eating other cows in their feed and it made them go crazy, and then people ate them and then it made people go crazy. But what these other doctors were saying is no, they in Britain specifically is where it originated. They were dipping the cows in this substance to purify them before killing them or something. Yes. And it was like some kind of a neurotoxin, and it got into their brains and it made them have these, reactions, like the behavioral kind of like as you talked about with the Roundup levels. And then people obviously ate them in a high enough dose that it made them have these same psychiatric and whatever side effects or whatever. Yep. So that's completely a different story. So because you're sort of in this field, could you shed light on that? Is that accurate? Yes,
that relates to this actually.
Oh, perfect.
By sort of revealing the truth. So and by the way, cows weren't cannibalizing other cows. They were taking sheep carcasses, including the skull and the brain, grinding them up and mixing it in with cow feed. Oh. And because cows are worth more money, that's where they want to boost the protein. Oh. Beef is worth more money than mutton, in other words. So they would take what few sheep they were killing, slaughtering, and they would ground up their carcasses. Okay. That's what they said was causing bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Or
yes.
BSE. Yeah, but you're right. Now, this is one of these things that will never be proven, but the correlation is dead on. It was immediately prior to the whole mad cow thing that the government of the UK mandated British beef producers to jack up the amount of stuff they were using. And what they're doing is a perfectly safe process otherwise. Once a year, you'll run your cows through a chute. Okay, so you have 1,000 cows, but they're all going to go through this one chute, one at a time. And you'll have a team of guys, probably guys, Salty Bear. This is not a job you want, okay? Just saying.
And I'm okay with that.
Good.
I'm not protesting for it.
And there's dust, the dried up feces from the cow manures. You're breathing it in. So they would sit there with kind of like an oil can. Yeah. And they would put a streak of oil down the cow's spine. It's usually like diesel oil, but it'll contain some insecticide. Okay. Now there's a number of reasons to do this. One of the main ones is if you're going to make leather jackets, the last thing you want is a tiny pinprick in the leather that can ruin the whole hide. A hide is as big as your living room floor when you stretch it out. One little pinprick, or 2, 3, and that comes from certain burrowing insects. Yes. Okay. Not mosquitoes, by the way, but there's certain ticks. Yeah. So they'll put an insecticide in, and they'll put it down the spine, and then it runs down both sides of the hide and kills whatever parasite or insect is there. Okay. As I say, that's a pretty proven safe practice. Okay. What the British government did, because the British government was pushing British beef. Right. It was a big thing. And yeah, the British do grow pretty good beef.
They do.
So they required a heightened level of insecticide to be used in this manner.
Yes.
And yes, unlike Roundup, which is going to get caught by the liver or kidney. Sorry, I don't know my anatomy. It's one or both.
I think liver cleans like everything, and the kidneys clean like the blood and things. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So, unlike that, this was going right on the hide. Now, have you ever used DEET for mosquito repellent?
Oh, yeah. That has killed. That's made women it's sterile as well, and it's given people all sorts of problems. Mm-hmm.
And perfectly natural, by the way. It's natural. I mean, like you said earlier, everything is natural. But DEET is literally a naturally derived mosquito repellent.
Right. You
just want to watch how much you use because your skin is an organ.
Yeah, the biggest organ.
So, yes, and like my dad used to say, if you spill whiskey on a baby, it gets drunk. If you're drinking while you're holding, don't do that. But he used to tell me that because the baby's skin is very porous; it'll absorb the alcohol.
But that's why we have topical creams, like women who are taking hormone replacement. It's topical, so obviously the skin is permeable. So hello.
Yes. Yeah. Estrogen. Yeah. So men, don't kiss your wives if they're putting estrogen on.
Indeed.
Yeah. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Good. Yeah. So this, unlike Roundup in the feed, there is Roundup in animal feed, and probably not a problem if you eat the meat. This was a problem, and it went right through the skin and got into the central nervous system and caused encephalopathy in the brain, the sponging. The brain turns into a sponge with holes in it. And then, that turned out to be, it could go cross-species if you ate the meat. You didn't even have to eat the brain of the cow. You could just eat the meat and get it, because meat is full of nerve endings. Yeah. So that you're absolutely right. Okay. And so the lesson though is we're always told a story, aren't we? They're always spinning a yarn. Every department has their communications department. The CDC, my wife and I noticed, because we might have to look for new jobs. We've been looking online, we might lose our job. And we noticed the Centers for Disease Control is on a hiring binge. They're hiring people left, right, and center. But this is what we noticed. Do you know what a communications director gets? Not a director. Sorry, not the director. A communications person at the CDC starts out at $120,000 a year.
Whoa, 6 figures right off the bat.
And they go up to 180 before they even become a manager.
Whoa.
That's how we're being always spun a yarn, just like we were on Mad Cow. That's what's going on. Yeah. Every department has their communications department, which used to be a throwaway department, right? Yeah. Like if you're the USDA, you had to do the real work of keeping food safe. And then you had a communications department that, would put out a newsletter or something. And here's what's new at the USDA. Now those jokers run the show. Yeah. The communications department is what all of these NGOs and regulators, this is what they're about. They're all in the communication. And what they do to disguise it, instead of using the word propaganda, they'll say, we need to characterize something. They'll say characterize. Yeah, so don't worry. When they came out with the story of cows eating sheep carcasses, it wasn't propaganda, Salty Bear. They were just characterizing what may have happened. It's a characterization.
Because people to this day still believe that. Like I was just yesterday telling someone, no, that's not what happened. It's that they've increased the concentration and it got into their, brains and central nervous system, made them go crazy, and then you went crazy. It's like, it wasn't because they were eating other freaking cows. Although maybe that contributed to it, but yeah.
Well, it wasn't a good idea. They stopped doing that. But, earlier, they always say correlation is not causation. Yeah. Well, wasn't that coincidence that the UK government immediately rescinded that requirement of jacking up the pesticide level in that oil they were pouring on all the cattle? It was mandated. There were no exceptions. Dairy cows, beef cows, all of them. And they rescinded it, just like they also rescinded the refeeding of sheep carcasses. So they covered themselves, right? But yeah, it's all.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have another similar question then, because when you're talking about, it's mostly grains, so like corn and wheat primarily, that are going to get the heavy doses of the Roundup. See, because I'm really interested in like nutrition and good diet and health like that, and how that affects your biology and in turn, all the rest of it. But my understanding was that the reason that, for example, dietitians and things would say don't eat wheat at all if you can, or just much, much less of it, is because it opens the junctures in your gut, in your stomach and intestines, and they'll call it like leaky gut syndrome or whatever. But ultimately, there's something about what the wheat is itself, what it's made of, that seems to be, or maybe the modified wheat at least, that is making your gut layer more permeable rather than keeping those junctures nice and tight so nothing gets out. And is that a feature, I guess what I'm asking, is the feature of Roundup because it's Roundup laden wheat, or is it just wheat in general that does that? Like, is that what's opening us up to getting more infections and more illnesses, or is it a chicken or the egg kind of thing, or is it all together?
No, I think, let's just say this, I think wheat is perfectly safe.
Okay.
Wheat got a bad rap.
Yeah.
I mean, how come suddenly there's gluten intolerance?
Yeah.
How come suddenly there's lactose intolerance in milk?
Yeah.
Again, our grandparents would laugh at us. They'd say, "What? You can't have a sandwich and a glass of milk? Shut up and sit down here."
Yeah.
They wouldn't listen to it. And
they also never pasteurized their milk, and they didn't die. And now all of a sudden the bacteria is killing everyone. It's like, really? Because you're raising it in a dirty way. That's why. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But even if you have completely safe organic wheat and completely safe organic milk, you have like you just said, you have leaky gut syndrome. The other one I've heard is, why we get cholesterol buildup in our veins? That's the body's response to that same process.
That's
You're getting
right. The cholesterol
leaky veins.
Yes.
Yeah. And your body says, better patch that leak.
It's like a bandage. The plaque is,
yes.
There's tears in your arteries or whatever, and instead of dying, it's making a plaque over top of it. So cholesterol is actually very healthy. Your liver produces cholesterol, so why are you trying to get rid of it?
Yeah. Well, the wiring of your brain, which is apparently less than 2 or 3%, the rest of your brain is pudding. It's cholesterol.
Yeah,
that
it's
holds
just
the
fat,
wiring in place. So cutting down on cholesterol was probably overall a bad idea. Although they say now there's 2 different kinds of cholesterol and blah blah blah. But yes, to answer your question, so even if you're eating perfectly healthy food, so you're not ingesting the Roundup in that food, you probably have Roundup in you from something else. Okay. Right? Unless you're on a 100% organic diet. Oh, and remember, Salty Bear, our previous discussions. Yeah. 75% of our organic food is imported. 43% tests positive for prohibited pesticides. So yeah, but let's say you're getting organic from the source. Maybe you're doing it yourself. Yeah. If you're eating anything else that may contain these, and remember, it's not the dosage anymore. Yeah. It's not the dosage that's crucial. It's how reactive your body is, how panicked your immune system and your digestive system are. Yeah. Then it reacts to things that would otherwise be perfectly healthy. The other example is peanut allergies. We didn't have peanut. They used to serve peanuts on airplanes.
I know.
Pardon me?
Everyone at my school had them in elementary school growing up. Everyone had a peanut, like 90% had peanut allergies. And there was like some kids who were allergic to everything, like apples, pears, cucumbers. How can you be allergic to everything? There's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other one is yeast intolerance.
Oh, really? I've not heard of that.
Yeah, that's a big one. It goes hand in hand with autoimmune, and you're probably also going to be lactose and gluten intolerant. So yeah, because they'll make gluten-free bread, but they still have to use yeast, right? As I understand. So yeah. So all these things, our grandparents would laugh at us, and we're always told, well, you better cut down on your cholesterol, and if your kid has peanut allergy, don't even have peanuts in the house, and no one's looking at, well, what caused this in the last 20, along with autism, what caused this? And I again say it's all of the billions of microorganisms in us. We're fine. You probably could drink a cup of Roundup if you didn't have an immune system and a digestive system. You'd be fine. Your heart would keep on beating and everything would be fine medically. But you just now now maybe you'll die from a common cold a month from now, because you destroyed your immune system by literally drinking Roundup. And they used to say that was true. They used to say you could, it was so safe you could drink it. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. But I find people are developing allergies into their later or intolerances they'll start with.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it gets worse. So if you're not born with it, which means your parents were bombarded by it and in utero and all the rest of it, then as an adult, maybe the high level of exposure of all these toxic chemicals and environmental pollutants and all the rest of it, that is probably chipping away at us. And then that is why people die from the cold, isn't it? And others don't.
Yeah, that's called bioaccumulation.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it might take 25 or 30 years. So when they did the LD50 tests on the rats, that probably took a week to kill half of them, and then they wrote up their results. To do a long-term epidemiological, immunological study, it really probably isn't feasible to even do it. It's going to take 25 years, and we'll all be dead by then. So I think we just need to crack down right now.
Definitely. No, that's definitely true. Because the other problem is, if it's in the soil, it's in the water, it's in the air, there's no escaping it, even if you don't eat the food.
Yeah.
Like, for example...
Yeah, now Roundup...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, our drinking water has, prescription medication and hormones and things in it, and there's no way to get rid of that. So how do you get rid of all this toxic waste and things? But, yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, that brings us back to farmers. Remember, of the 40, 50,000, some say 100,000 lawsuits pending for Roundup causing cancer. So far, at least, none of them are farmers. See, if I was a lawyer, Salty Bear, I'm going to be a scrupulous lawyer. I'm going to get a stack of lawsuits coming in. In that stack, I'm going to find one farmer. I'm going to put him at the top.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that one to court first because I think I have the best chance. They're doing the opposite. If there are farmers... Now, remember, the reason I'm saying this is farmers are inhaling Roundup. They're not eating it. Well, they're not eating any more of it than you or I are, right? In fact, farmers probably still have a better diet than most of us. So they're eating out of a garden that's on their own property. Right. So, the case right now is not for consuming it. All of the plaintiffs have inhaled it by what? By applying it. And I think Werner Bowman would love to settle those, and then the issue of consuming or eating Roundup just goes away. It just gets swept under the rug. He'll, 10 years from now, he'll say, someone will come forth and say, my kid died, and maybe he could even prove it. Maybe laboratory analysis and autopsies will improve, and they'll be able to prove, well, my kid died because he ate Roundup. My kid never applied Roundup to a field. He ate it in his Cheerios. And Werner Bowman, he'll say, we've been indemnified. Leave us alone. And he'll have the regulators see their reputation is on the line. Once they do this, once they create this characterization that Roundup is safe when used according to these, they have to stick to their guns. So what I'm saying is indemnification is permanent, and farmers will keep using it and people will keep eating it. I think he wants to settle this suit as long as the suit is focused solely on inhaling it.
Okay, now I have another question.
Yes, please.
Because earlier you mentioned this, and you're quite right. Not all countries have the same standards. Like, for example, you mentioned Russia and other Soviet countries tend to use organic wheat, for example, or the EU and Britain have a better standards for food production than America and Canada, because they don't even want, they were debating in Parliament, do we want USDA beef? It's like, well, do you want chlorine washed chicken? Like, I don't. So anyway, other countries have different standards. For example, when you're traveling or whatever and you get McDonald's, each country is, as I understood, if this is true or not, they will have like their own local farmers, and their own local practices have to be applied to making those standard McDonald's burgers or whatever. So like, for example, when I was in Britain or like in Amsterdam or something, the burgers at McDonald's were so good. Like, I don't know what it was about it, that it was just so much better. Yeah, like they tasted good. And like in America, the fries have like 19 ingredients, most of which are chemicals, whereas in Britain it's just like oil, potato, salt. That's it, you know? So I just thought, that's interesting. So does that apply all around? Like, is that why maybe people in some countries are generally healthier than others, because of those practices and standards that they don't do quite so much as we do over here in North America? Yeah.
For sure. There are huge differences.
So
the big one is
Cheerios
GMO
maybe
crop.
in Russia are probably not going to be as toxic as Cheerios in America, is what I'm trying to say, because they might have their own standards, or do they pass it around because it's a packaged product?
No, you're partly right. But here's the bad news.
Okay.
So Russia and Europe have banned GMO crops, many of which, not all of them, are sprayed with Roundup in the middle of the growing season because they're Roundup ready.
Right.
And so everyone thinks, oh, good, yay for Europe and Russia. They didn't buy into the Monsanto lie. Mm-hmm. Here's the bad news. That's only a small part of the problem. Desiccation is way worse.
Okay.
Because now you're closer to harvest.
Yeah.
And bad news is, to answer your question, everyone's desiccating. That's why Bayer sees it as the only growth market for Roundup. Everyone's desiccating. It depends where you are. So, for instance, cereal crops are generally not being desiccated in the further south you go in Europe. But in England, they're big on desiccation. Why? Because they have fog.
Yeah.
They don't get that nice dry weather in the fall. So England is big on desiccating. Sure. I don't know about Russia, but all I've heard from Russia is, yes, they wisely rejected the Monsanto farming model of genetic engineering, but they have not rejected desiccation. They have not.
I mean, I asked because in our other video we talked about how like which country has the best standard for organic, and you said it was Japan, and I'm like, yeah. I knew it. It was Japan. They look like they have good food, but maybe I thought that would apply in general. Like they might put their foot down on that type of practice because, keep the cancer rates down or whatever.
I bet you they have.
Yeah.
I bet you Japan. See,
but their climate
the rule is you don't see. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not even growing 10% of their own food in Japan, but they will demand their standards are upheld outside of Japan.
Okay, so they won't import it. They'll test it, and they say no, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Not only will they test it, but it'll go back to seeding. You don't seed a crop till it's sold. So farmers are right now. What is it now? It's mid-April. Farmers throughout the Midwest, in Canada, in the United States, right now they're contracting with European and Japanese. And that those buyers will say, yeah, you can spray the field before seed. We don't want any GMO crops, and we don't want you to desiccate.
Right.
And then they might test to make sure. But see what I mean? They're laying down the law. Okay. And it has nothing to do with the USDA. It's an individual farmer who's made a contract.
So for our better clients, we do this. For you plebs, you get that.
Yeah, not we. Yeah, not we. Our farmers do. Yes, farmers are smart. Yeah, our USDA doesn't care. Let's say you were a farmer and you contracted with a Japanese buyer, and the Japanese buyer said, no Roundup, no desiccation. The USDA wouldn't care if you violated that. They're not going to come to your farm and shut you down. They don't care. That's between you and the buyer. That's a private contract. You're not violating any American law if you lie, in other words, and go ahead and dessiccate the crop. Now you might get caught if they test it in Japan, but in other words, the USDA only enforces its own rules. So yeah, it's not us. individual farmers. I just wanted to. Farmers know how to do business. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And with that said, we probably are shipping a lot of finished product around the world. Like you said, a box of Cheerios. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you get a box of Cheerios in Moscow, maybe it's from oats grown in Nebraska or Ohio. For all I know, I don't know. America exports a lot of food. So
the reason I ask
are desiccated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. The reason I ask is like, again, when I am, for example, traveling somewhere, like, for example, people used to say the best Coca-Cola was the one made in Mexico because they had the old plant and the old recipe and they made it the old way and it was the best. It was made with sugar or whatever. And we use high fructose corn syrup. But again, exactly. Yeah. But again, like, because I've had, the fortune to travel around and things, actually, the former Soviet countries do use sugar in their Coke and not fructose corn syrup. It does say like manufactured in wherever local country. So that's why I was wondering, maybe they'll say, yeah, we'll follow your recipe to make it like brand standard, but we'll do it our way because we don't do that. We simply don't grow food like that, and we're not going to start buying these products to spray and everything. So that's why I asked. I did wonder if there's some place to escape, but if you're saying everyone does it, everyone desiccates their crops, well then.
You're making a very good point though. Yeah, the Eastern Bloc countries are forcing Coca-Cola and McDonald's to do it according to their rules. And McDonald's and Coca-Cola, they're fine with that because as long as they're making a profit. So there is a difference in that sense. But if just remember, Salty Bear, everyone is desiccating. Everyone around the world, unless it's certified organic, everyone is desiccating. The only question is how much. So like I said, 20 years ago, maybe 1% of American and Canadian farmers were trying out this new way of harvesting. It costs money. You don't want to just do it on the lark. And it's growing as we see fewer and farmers on the land. Well, Asia, with their rice market that we mentioned earlier, they're still very labor intensive. You still have little farms with 5-10 acres, subsistence farming, selling off the rice to have a bit of cash. That's all. I think Bear sees the same thing happening in Asia that happened here in the 70s. They're going to drive a lot of those people out of business. Right. And that's already happening in India. That's already happening in India with GMO and Monsanto being in there.
Africa too. They can't. Yeah, they can't grow their own crops. Yeah.
The money isn't just in selling the patented crop, but in changing the demographic of your market. You'd rather sell bulk to one corporate farmer with thousands of acres than thousands of small scale farmers. They're just less paperwork,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's their model.
That's pretty shocking. So let's tie it back into the virus then. What can we do? What are some like real life things that people can do to, don't say wash your hands, please, or I'm going to end this right now.
Yeah. I stopped washing my hands.
On principle.
Yeah.
Right. But seriously, what is it that we can do to improve our health? Because it's more, to me, I was talking with someone and we almost got, not in an argument, but we were getting a back and forth about it, I'm saying you need to increase your immune system and make yourself more resilient and, just be able to tolerate things that happen to you. But other people are like, no, we're past that. It's all pharmacological interventions from here on in. Get me the shot, get me the pill, masks all the way, hazmat suits. It's like, well, no, you're better off being able to withstand the bombardment rather than relying on things that may or may not work and may actually be toxic in the end. So what do you suggest? How do we help people out? Because people are freaking right out.
Okay, first, the bad news, there's nothing you can do about consuming desiccated grains. Nothing.
Okay,
you're going to consume them. You've been consuming them. And remember, even if only one farmer out of 100 did it 20 years ago, and now there's, 50 out of 100, and even if you think you're going to find those other 50 that aren't doing it, you're still going to get it trace amounts. everyone is desiccating to one extent or another, and you've been consuming it for years. There's nothing you can individually do. And remember, even if you switch to organic, we already covered that. You may or may not be getting what you think you're paying for. So yeah, I guess the only solution would be go direct to a farm. You might go direct to an organic farmer to buy carrots, but you're not going to go buy wheat and then grind it yourself and make bread. I mean, maybe you would.
Some people are doing that, but it's work.
Not feasible. So the bad news is desiccation is now a fact of life. But here's the good news. How many times have you heard Dr. E. Michael Jones say, God turns evil to good?
Amen. Under the providence of God. That's right.
Yeah. Now, desiccation was never approved. Right. It just snuck in the back door.
Okay.
They never tested it. And they just sort of said, well, we're already using it 2 times a year, right? For pre-seeding and mid-year for GMO crops. Mm-hmm. What the heck? What's the problem? You can drink a cup of it, Salty Bear, so why worry? It's the safest herbicide on the market. Well, here's the good news. God's going to turn that evil. I mean, the best you could say was the regulators were asleep, right? I think a lot of the regulators knew they were getting into something and they turned a blind eye. But, let's say they were ignorant. That's going to change now if this gets out. If it turns out that Roundup is, even to some small degree, impacting our immune systems. And remember, it impacts your digestive system first, and that gets into all those food allergies we talked about. But here we are with COVID-19, the so-called coronavirus. If it's even only playing a minor role, and I think it might be foundational, because like I said, it's no longer the dosage that's the issue. It's how freaked out your immune system is. That's the issue. So even 1 part per million is now going to have an impact. And so the good news is this will expose this finally after years of turning a blind eye from the regulators.
But just to clarify, what you're saying is that this the Roundup component is exacerbating our chance of contracting any illness, not just this one, or is it like it's a contributing factor rather than like a cause for it? Specifically, it's just opening us up to this and anything else to invade our systems because we're naturally now weakening it every meal, everything that we ingest. It's
like 5G.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if you have, oops, there's another one. You're going to get a thing on the
one. That one's people are really diving into that one.
Yes, and rightfully so. But even if you don't have 5G, the question is microwave radiation.
In general.
Is it contributing to the COVID crisis? Either full-on 5G or 4G or whatever. Even just having a cell phone in your hip pocket. Is it? And so what we can all say as lay people is it's exacerbating.
Yeah.
It can't be good.
No.
And I would say that Roundup, at the very least, it's not good.
Yeah.
And again, I want to say it's been overlooked. Yeah. And just one more time, not only overlooked by the regulators, but agronomists who go to school and have a whole career in saying, no, grow this crop, not that one, advising farmers. They'll say, I encourage people to Google it. I don't think you can find an agronomist who will flat out say, yes, Roundup is a good herbicide to use as a desiccant. They all say Roundup is not a desiccant. That's the first thing they say to cover their butts. And then they go on to say, but here's how you use it. I'm not kidding you. And one of the things they say is, because you can use other herbicides as a desiccant. There's many, but Roundup is the big one. And they'll all, by the time you read down, they'll all get to the point where they say, there's always weeds lurking in your crop that you can't even see. Well, if you desiccate with Roundup, those weeds aren't there the following spring, Salty Bear. Yeah, you see,
how convenient.
You get a 2-for-1 deal.
You get yourself a twofer, eh?
Exactly. Yeah, but they all begin by covering, CYA. They'll say Roundup is not a desiccant, and then they describe how to use it as a desiccant. So we have a lack of scrutiny by the regulators, whether they're agricultural, environmental, or health. They just totally waved their hand and said, well, we're already using it, why not? And this, if there's any impact from Roundup on COVID, or as you also said, on anything like food allergies, autism, if it has any impact, now the mask will come off and people will say, you guys got to look into this.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. That's how God's going to turn this evil. But again, you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
I'm just want people to know that all you can do is listen to this interview, and now you know about it.
Yeah, and also just try to live a better, more healthy lifestyle, because it's just compounding risk on top of risk on top of risk. If you smoke and you drink and you eat this shite and you don't get exercise and you're low on vitamins and you're stressed and all of this, the more compounding factors you have, the worse it's going to be. So you can't knock this one on the head, but you can maybe take care of those other things, and you keep the inflammation down, you keep the stress levels down, you keep all other mitigating health things up, okay?
Yep.
And then that's pretty much what our take-home message is for people, that we're under attack. Trump's right. We are at war.
You're right.
Yeah,
we can do something, and that's to be totally healthy.
Yeah, sure.
So I think I said earlier, let's say you got 1 part per million of Roundup in your Cheerios, but you had an otherwise perfectly healthy immune system, and you didn't even own a TV, so you're not following this stupid COVID crisis that has only seemed to be killing people in China, Italy, and New York. Your immune system would just kick that 1 part per million right out, and nothing would happen. Your immune system wouldn't respond. So yes, absolutely right. A healthy lifestyle is going to make you just bulletproof. But I want to say one more time, unlike other toxins where Paracelsus said the dosage makes the poison, not Roundup. Roundup is dependent on the susceptibility of the target.
Okay.
So if the plant, if you use 2,4-D on a plant when it's 40 degrees out, barely above freezing, the plant will die. If you use Roundup on a plant, anything below room temperature, it might turn yellow and then come back. Roundup depends on the susceptibility of the target. Okay. So that, unlike all the other toxins in our diets, which are horrible, like I say with Roundup, you can have 1 part per million, and if your immune system and digestive system are already on red alert because they're not following the advice you just gave, it'll hit you. It will, and that's buried in the chemistry. You can't get around that with Roundup.
So here's an analogy, and correct me if I'm wrong. Think of Roundup as like a predator, and it only preys on the weak. So don't make yourself weaker, because that will make you more susceptible. So you don't present yourself on a platter. Prevent all of these things from happening by keeping your immune health up, your gut health up. Is there anything specific that you would say? Like, is there something that counteracts it, for example? Like, for example, if you're having thyroid problems, what they would recommend is that you take more iodine in. Is there something that will have this balancing relationship with Roundup, or it's really just, once it's in there, it's in there?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. And the problem, again, is they only did LD50 testing. They didn't do epidemiological, long-term clinical trials. So we don't know. And again, Bayer wants to keep it that way.
Yeah. Is this something your body can expel through like urine, sweat, feces, or is it like heavy metals that will stay in your body? What is?
No.
It does come out.
I hate it. Okay, Salty Bear, we can't end on this note because this is going to sound good. Roundup, unlike 2,4-D, dicamba, and a bunch of other horrible pesticides, DDT, Roundup does break down.
Okay.
It does. So you spray a weed, and a lot of the spray just goes into the soil. This was why environmentalists were excited 40 years ago. When it contacts the soil, depending on conditions, it eventually breaks down. Unlike all the other pesticides, which can end up in well water, never mind groundwater.
Right.
Roundup does break down. Okay. But so it must, I'm assuming it must break down. It must metabolize eventually inside of us, just as it metabolizes on a weed that you didn't kill. Remember, you failed to kill it because it wasn't uptaking enough, and the weed sprang back. And if you went and tested that weed later, there'd be no Roundup left. It doesn't just dissipate; it breaks down. Okay. And by the way, when it contacts soil microbes, again, we can't end on this note. Most pesticides kill soil microbes and bacteria. You don't have soil if you don't have microbes. You just have sand.
Yeah, soil is a living organism for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, billions of microorganisms in a teaspoon of soil.
Wow.
Most pesticides kill those microorganisms. We can't end on this note. Microorganisms tear Roundup apart. They tear it apart, Salty Bear.
Oh, no.
You can still detect what are called the breakdown substances, which were the building blocks of Roundup. You can still detect them later. But the microbes win in that case. So eventually in our gut, yes, eventually the microbes win. But like we were saying, if you're already under stress because you have a peanut allergy and lactose intolerance and you're not eating a healthy diet, and you throw Roundup in there. And that, again, just to come back to that, that's where I see God turning this evil. This has been 20 years of evil. Out of the 50-year lifespan of Roundup, the last 20, we just got this. It snuck in the back door as a forced ripening agent. It just snuck in. And that's where we'll turn the evil to good. When more people hear about this, that practice will be questioned.
Yeah, I just don't know how that's permitted. Like, for example, I was watching... there was like a Senate hearing about when because you mentioned 5G, they wanted to put it up, and one of the senators asked, so how much money have you spent on testing? How much testing have you actually done? And he goes, none. We spent nothing. We've not done 0 tests. So how are you putting up the towers? Like, don't you have any testing? Same with this. Like, what justification do they have to use this as a desiccant if it's explicitly not for that? It's like going off script with prescription medications. It's not really for this, but you could try it and it might work for you. So what's the deal?
You want to know what the deal is? Okay, so that's a very good quote. I forget the guy's name. He's the senator. He's a Democrat who claimed he was a U.S. Marine in Vietnam. It turns out he wasn't. But anyway, God bless him. Yeah, God bless him, because he nailed those guys down from Verizon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you want to know what the answer is? One of those guys admitted, we haven't really done any testing on 5G towers. And here's the answer, Salty Bear. You know what that guy said? I don't know if he's from Verizon or AT&T. He said, that's something we could have a private meeting about later, Senator. There's your answer.
Oh, my God.
That's how those things get handled.
Yeah.
They had a private meeting. What are you worried about? Mm-hmm. They had a private meeting, Salty Bear. What, you think he's corruptible?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, he's an upstanding citizen.
Yeah, he's
veteran,
a senator.
No less.
Be a damn veteran.
Oh God.
Yep.
What a joke.
They had and the guy said it right there in the hearing.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when Al Gore was being grilled about global warming, and a senator asked him, aren't you setting up a whole trading market, like a whole stock exchange for carbon? Al Gore, you can look this up. Al Gore said flat out to him, he said, that's something I'd be happy to discuss with you over a breakfast meeting.
Oh, that's amazing.
Business, like if you go out for dinner, well, that's romance, right? Mm-hmm. And lunch is but business meetings are breakfast meetings.
That's right.
Yeah. So he was right in public. He was throwing a bone out to that senator that maybe I'll cut you in.
Yeah. I think there was another incident. Well, people seem to be okay with saying things like that. I think Pelosi said they wanted to pass a bill, and they're like, what's in it? Well, we could tell you after we pass it. It's like, okay. All right. I didn't think that's how it worked. But yeah, okay. So ultimately, it's just corruption then, isn't it?
Yep.
With industry and money and lobbying and everything. So people will always say, isn't it easier to assume that it's incompetence and not conspiracy? And I say, well, incompetent people can be corrupt too. It's like, I don't believe that professionals who are sitting on committees and boards and doing the tests are so incompetent that they don't know the risk. Like, I was reading a research paper from the Nature journal, which is like a really reputable journal. About 5 years ago, they wrote that this COVID SARS thing is a problem, and it can be highly infectious in people. That was 5 years ago. But before that, in Canadian news, they were talking about it having originated in the Middle East, and that they sent over a sample to Canada and to a lab in Rotterdam, so in Holland, and they were all doing this in like 10 years ago. More than 10 years ago. So this isn't actually a new virus. They've known about it. So I don't believe it's incompetence. I don't think when they say it's novel, how is it novel? Novel means new. It's not new.
Yeah.
All of these things, I just don't believe that there's moron after Muppet after idiot. Like, how are all these people failing to do their only expertise, like their job? So I wish they were just stupid, but I don't believe people are that stupid. So
no, you're right. And where's the control for the Centers of Disease Control? Mm-hmm. Well, the control here's the control. Like you just said, they're sending samples around the world. Mm-hmm. Until they were ready, those samples were perfectly sequestered, Salty Bear. There was no outbreak. Mm-hmm. The Purelator man or the FedEx guy didn't get some on his fingers and go home and kill his family. Yeah, they're totally in control until they decide, okay, it's go time, and then and they're still in control. Yeah. Then their control becomes controlling, remember, the narrative. Mm-hmm. They start characterizing things, and that's their role. Yeah. So they're not incompetent.
No.
They're not ignorant. They're
just playing dumb. It's a tactic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, occasionally they'll promote someone who is genuinely ignorant.
Oh, that makes it easier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because that guy can stand in front of the camera, and you could analyze his facial features all day long. Yeah. You think, oh, he's telling the truth because he believes it.
That's right.
There are people like that, but you're right. Fauci, Bill Gates, his transgendered wife Melinda, they all know exactly what's going on. Oh, you didn't know that?
Is that a fact?
Oh, look at her.
Oh, look at her. Yeah, well, well, she's a handsome woman. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Same with Jeff Bezos' wife.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them. Have you seen, what's that guy? Who's that New York guy? Schumer. His wife is hideous as well.
Oh, yeah. She looks like a linebacker.
Oh, my God. Retired linebacker. Oh, my God. As a woman, maybe I should be kind and not slag off women's looks, but like, my God, of all the hot ladies you could have married, you're rich, you're powerful. I mean, my goodness. That's neither here nor there. But
you're being careful. You want to be a lady, as you say, but I think that's actually part of it. These people are all involved in deviant sexual behavior, which you can see. Yeah, very diplomatic. I think they all are.
Indeed. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what would you like to end on? Because we didn't end on a Roundup being great. So is there a take-home message you'd like to give before I eat into your afternoon?
Yeah, it's the revelation. Mm-hmm. It's the revelation. And remember, God doesn't just sit there and sort of babysit us and take care of us. Right. He wants to see us, be proactive. God helps those who help themselves. So we've got to start getting this knowledge out. You're going to still eat Roundup, stay healthy. You're going to be fine. And this whole COVID thing's eventually going to blow over. Because they're going to quit with the propaganda at some point. They're just going to run out of steam. But again, this has to just be exposed. And for the first time ever, they will decide whether or not desiccation with Roundup should be allowed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hope that happens. Actually, because
that's all that can. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's if I can say, I ended on a Bible verse, because it came to my mind today. People often like to reject anyone who questions the official story or anything like that, and it's so sad because it's often to their own detriment. Like, we're not just doing it because we want you to suffer and we want to burst your bubble. Like, maybe there's something wrong and somebody needs to say something for the wheels to start turning, and it'll actually be for your benefit, even though you're too cowardly to do it. And like, it reminded me of that verse in Matthew 23. It says Matthew 23:13, and it says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, neither do you enter into the kingdom of heaven, but you don't let other people enter as well." And it makes me think like, so you are happy living in this shithole, but you are stopping other people who want to actually get to a better place.
Yeah. And
I see that around all the time, and it came to me like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So all we can do is share. Help
if Fauci and Bill Gates want to go to hell, let them. But why are they dragging us?
Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
So thank you so very much for your time. It's always informative, always interesting, and I hope people will dig into this a little bit, because everyone's always complaining about the food quality and the policies around it, and it's like, well, you have an opportunity here to do something. So
now on that note, let's say 9/11 was just
19 guys with the box cutters,
19 hijackers, 2 planes, 3 buildings. Why would anyone get upset with us for questioning that?
If it's true, then
if they're confident,
facts,
you should be, bring it on. Hey, Salty Bear, bring on your crazy conspiracy theories. Same with Roundup. Let's just say it turns out Roundup, no effect whatsoever on your digestive or immune system. Well, we should hammer that out, and that's the missing piece. They did hammer it out when it was used 40 years ago for pre-seeding. They didn't quite hammer it out for GMO use in the middle, and they not even close. There's nothing except, as I said, for professional agronomists warning you, Roundup is not a desiccant. So we're like, we don't even have the official story, is what I'm saying, on Roundup being used as you see what I'm saying?
We don't even have the spin. Exactly. Correct.
We don't even have the spin. It was this. They just whistled past the graveyard.
Prove it. The onus is not on me to disprove things where I don't have the information. Show me your books and I'll prove it if you're too freaking lazy to prove it. Okay, but actually the responsibility falls on you because you want to promote this thing, not on me who's asking a question because it affects me. That's my job, and I've done my due diligence. Now it's your turn.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in other words, we don't have to prove anything with Roundup. We raise the issue. We say, hey, so what you would say to a regulator or a politician is, where's the study? There must have been some studies back in 2000, because that's when just show me one of the studies. There are none. What they have is studies showing how effective it was, in the field. Like I said, it kills the weeds that are going to come up next spring. Yay, that was a study done. But there was no long-term safety studies. So we should just ask them. Just pretend we think there are studies, even though I just told your listeners there are none.
Surely one must exist.
Come on. And it must have been reproduced somewhere, because that's what you do with science, right? It has to be reproduced.
That's right. No, and by that same... No, you're quite right. Exactly. But the thing is, people are just such cowards. That's the worst about it, is that they're too lazy to care about themselves. Maybe because maybe this is like a spiritual sickness people have, that maybe they don't think they're worthy, they don't think they're strong enough to do it or capable, or like, what's the point? I'm going to die anyway. Like, no. Whatever happened to leaving the next generation something better? Like, I think my generation isn't going to live as long or as healthy as our parents did, and they're all like already 1 foot in the grave, so how bad is it going to be for us? And then what about the next generation? And it's cumulative. Like, why would you pass the buck? I don't get that.
Exactly.
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's bad enough we're passing on, what is it now, 23 trillion in debt, or in Canada, whatever it is.
That money's never going to get repaid, and you know it.
Yeah,
and but it's not meant to. Yeah, well,
the interest will get paid. That's the thing. But most people, like you just said, people are kind of self-deprecating. They'll worry about that, like a monetary fiscal debt, which is, you should worry. But something like this, they'll just say, well, it must be safe, or they wouldn't let them do it.
That's what kills me. That's really what kills me. It's like this whole left-right thing. I'm sorry, I just have to say this. It's like conservatives are almost like liberals who are just cheap. They just care more about the money and the taxes. It's like, at least those people have even though they're like a bit crazy and wrong about a lot of things, at least they have the decency to fight for what they believe in, wrong or right, whatever. They think that they're right because they've been fed like lies, and they think that that's evidence, and that's fine. But they're actually like going out and doing it. Whereas we're all of a sudden, so the media lies to you all the time, but then this one time they're telling you the truth, and you're going to do it. All of a sudden they're just, you would think it would be the reverse, that like people want to conserve tradition, and yet they do nothing to speak for the truth or actually take a hit when it comes to it. But those people are willing to, and it's just like ridiculous, so ridiculous. So like, there's a reason why, nothing gets fixed.
Yeah. The other thing is, we got the misinformation includes a bit of the truth, right?
Of course, it has to, or it's not believable.
So people say, well, what about this? Why are you so paranoid? But with Roundup, again, I don't want to sound like I'm defending it, but there are people who want to ban it outright.
Yeah.
Right. And then they'll say to me, well, you're just trying to carve out a niche for Monsanto and Bayer so they can keep selling it. Well, no, I'm just being realistic. Like, it's been used now for at least 50 years.
Yeah.
And we need to focus on the real problem with it. But so you have these groups out there that's their whole stock and trade as activists. They want to ban Roundup. I'd be happy if I'm sure we could figure out how to farm again. We'll just have to put everyone back on the farm. That'd be fine with me. But just realistically, I don't see it happening. And as long as we're focused on some unachievable goal, we can't. Like, I just want to say again, desiccation was never tested, and I'm certain it's affecting us inside our bodies. So let's just focus on that, and then we could expand from there and ban GMO Roundup ready crops later. But so those people who want to ban Roundup outright, they do get voice in the media as lunatics, and then that makes you and me look crazy because we're just trying to ban the use of it prior to harvest. Right. And so you and I'll never get media coverage, but the lunatics will. They're not lunatics, they're good people, but
well, they mean well, but the thing is everything has its purpose, right? So if it works for the preceded part, or as you said, great, fantastic, use it for that. No one said you have to ban it, you don't have to lose money or whatever, but don't do it for things that it doesn't work for. It's not tested for. But if you want to do it, test it. Do what everyone else does. Why does the pharmaceutical have to go through clinical trials and stage 1, 2, 3, all this? You do the same then. Oh, you don't want to? Yeah. Well, then you don't really have a leg to stand on. It's unethical what you're doing. And this is not grounded in science. Like people who keep saying, you're anti-science. You're anti-science. You're anti-science.
Yeah, and I think we could win this. Awesome. I think we could win this one to fully eliminate that third untested use of Roundup. I think we could win that, hands down. Probably going to take a couple of years, and it'll probably coincide with however these lawsuits shake out, the Roundup lawsuits. But yeah.
Well, should we end on a positive note then?
Here's another positive note. Rye bread. Okay.
Yeah, man, it's all about rye.
Everyone's down on gluten and they don't like wheat. Rye, just get some rye, and you still have to use some wheat, or you won't have a loaf of bread. So I just want to end on that. Because, by the way, it's one of the crops. I don't think it is desiccated. I used to know a lot of farmers up north. It's mainly a northern crop from northern Germany. It's grown in northern Canada. I don't think anyone's desiccating rye. So there you go. Get some rye in your belly.
There you go. Till those fields. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, and very interesting topic, and we'll certainly have more to talk about next time as well. So
okay, and I'll send you my updated article, Salty.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah. And would you like me to share anything with anybody? Is there anything you'd like me to direct people to come to find you? Because do you write regularly for Culture Wars, or do you just here and there?
No. Yeah, here and there. Whenever he'll have me. I get about half my material into the pages of Culture Wars, which I'm happy to do, by the way. Yeah, it's maybe even slightly less, but this one's coming out.
It's in this issue?
In Culture Wars. Right. Yeah, no, in not till June, unfortunately, because he already has the May issue ironed out.
Okay.
So yeah, it will be coming out, and that's where people should go to Culture Wars to see this. And there's a lot of detail. Believe it or not, there's more, Salty Bear. There's more to this story that you and I didn't even touch upon.
Oh my God. We'll have to do a follow-up then. We'll have to do a follow-up.
Go to Culture Wars and we'll do a follow-up.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Mischa. It's always a pleasure.
All right.
All right. You take care.
God bless you.
And you. Take care. Bye-bye.